Also known as Voyage to Danger, this movie is the first to see a different director in Masaaki Osumi. If that name's familiar to you, you might have recognised him as the initial director from all the way back in Series 1. Karen Kurosaki is our leading lady this time, as voiced by Yatsuko Tanaka. Also of note is Nachi Nozawa voicing the antagonist John Claus, as he was one of the original voices for Lupin all the way back in the pilot, and not the last time he'll be voicing someone in Lupin III. The ending theme this time is Destiny Love. A botched heist leads to the police surrounding Lupin and Jigen. Zenigata arrives, dismissing the force and heading up solo. All he's armed with is a few bottles of booze. Turns out he's been taken off the Lupin case. His replacement is Keith Hayden, who's rejoining the ICPO after leaving to become a mercenary. He doesn't particularly like the idea of just apprehending the gang, but the director tells him that Lupin is known to resist arrest. As Lupin and Jigen talk, the latter looks over Zenigata's orders letter. His new assignment is to look into the black market arms dealers known as Shotshell. Lupin decides to give him a hand, partly out of respect and partly because arms dealers tend to sell stuff in the price range of millions. They first head to a smaller scale black market for clues. Lupin gets a lot of gimmicky junk, but no clues on Shotshell. He decides to gather up Fujiko and Goemon to aim for his next target. In Moscow University, a nuclear professor called Karen Kurosaki is taken captive. Goemon and Fujiko come to her aid before her kidnappers get too far. Zenigata and Lupin sneak into a dock, before at least somewhat grateful that Lupin's going to help out with Shotshell despite him just doing it for the money. The current target to get their interest is a Russian submarine armed with nukes known as Ivanov. Sounds familiar somehow. Despite Zenigata's leeriness, Lupin hijacks the sub easily. Fujiko and Goemon try to sneak in disguised as a news crew, but the dock guards don't like the media. Or rather, Karen causes an incident and forces their hand. It's a minor setback and the gang unite on board the sub. Jigen catches Karen's eye as they board. Lupin's recruited Karen because she was involved in the design of the sub and knows how to operate it. She's wary and she's received offers to defect, and this just sounds like another one, but eventually agrees so long as she can dismantle the nukes on board. Hardly a problem condition for Lupin, of course, as, well, what would he need with them? As Lupin and Goemon relax with some fishing, Jigen and Karen engage in some small talk. She asks if he can show her how to handle a gun, as she has no experience. He gives her some basics, but then she turns the gun on him, accusing him of killing her father. Outside, Keith launches an attack, throwing off her shot. Heading back underwater, the gang receive numerous calls from world leaders aiming to buy the Ivanov from them. They aren't impressed, as they come off more like bad infomercials than proposals. Despite worrying that Shotshell won't take the bait, their leader, John Claus, eventually contacts them. He arranges a meeting with the gang to meet on his island base off the coast of Guam. Before that, they drop Zenigata, Goemon and Karen off in Maui. The remaining gang head for the island's location. Brad, one of Shotshell's soldiers and Karen's would-be kidnapper, recognises Fujiko from the Moscow incident. Guided through a waterfall, the gang dock and Brad escorts them to John's location. He admits that a lot of what he sells is junk, but his clients don't know that. He offers the gang a job, but Lupin claims not to be interested. All an act, of course, and they listen in on John's request, sealing a decommissioned sub and nuclear core. Karen's tired of waiting and tries to sneak a car key from Zenigata while he's sleeping. He's quick to sense it, but she claims that she just wants to do some shopping. Goemon agrees to go in her place, the group unaware that Keith's tracked them. Lupin manages to take the sub and reactor with little effort. Karen makes her escape by hotwiring a car, but doesn't get far thanks to Keith. Using her as a shield, he sends Zenigata flying over a cliff. Goemon steps up, but Keith keeps Karen close by. Goemon drops his sword but gets ready to kick it back up. Keith launches a knife, and all Zenigata can do is look on as Goemon falls. Back at the island, Fujiko snaps some photos of the area. She runs into John and they engage in some light flirting. Lupin returns with his prize and Fujiko slips him the photos, allowing him to learn the whole building seems to be a vault and that vacuum pipes would be the best solution to grabbing the money. Keith is revealed to be a Shotshell agent, telling John he's headed there with Karen, who agreed on the grounds that she could kill Jigen to take care of the gang. Fujiko meets with John for dinner. He tells her that weapon dealing is just a small part of his income, and that helping instigate wars generates capital his way. He then asks about Lupin's plans, but she claims she doesn't know, suggesting he ask Lupin himself. All that does is get her locked in the room. Lupin and Jigen drill around the building to ready the vacuum. Fujiko contacts them, warning that John is growing suspicious. Her own escape plan ends up going south thanks to a reinforced door though. Jigen begins siphoning the money into the Ivanov and Lupin meets with John. John informs them about Keith and offers to keep him hidden in exchange for working for him. Lupin responds with a gunshot, but John turns out to be using a holographic projection as the guards surround him. Lupin asks for the obligatory last smoke, though likely on Kennedy he's only got gum. Specifically, gum he bought from the black market that explodes after 10 seconds of chewing. He manages to swipe a motorbike and use more gum to keep his pursuers at bay. Unfortunately, Keith arrives on the scene with an airstrike. Jigen shoots him down, but Karen's shown to be with him. Jigen urges Lupin to head to the Ivanov without him for now. Keith pursues Lupin to the dock and runs him into the sea. Lupin escapes to the Ivanov, but not without some missile damage. Jigen talks with Karen and reveals that, yes, he does remember her father. They were once partners and assigned to pick up a payment, but it turned out to be an empty briefcase. Jigen heard a trigger behind him, but he was the faster shot and Kurosaki went down. Making no excuses, he offers Karen his gun. Before she can fire, Keith returns. Jigen escapes to a burned out building, but Keith tosses a grenade, seemingly killing Jigen and denying Karen her revenge. John contacts Lupin to tell him of Jigen's fate. He also makes a move on the Ivanov, following locking Fujiko away to keep her from Keith's bloodlust. The Ivanov hasn't gone too far thanks to the missile damage. However, the only thing they find on board is a mocking message as a missile launches. American intelligence picks up on this and counters with their own missile strike. Lupin was riding the missile and manages to parachute out before the countering missiles take it out. Back in Maui, Zenigata's offering a final prayer for Goemon when Lupin crashes through. Keith, meanwhile, rightly suspects that John is hiding Fujiko and warns she's known for betraying anyone who gets involved with her. John turns his attention to Karen, attempting to recruit her into Shotshell, but she's still angry over being denied revenge against Jigen. Lupin and Zenigata lounge around, with the former not convinced Goemon was killed. The boy takes Santetsuken, the only thing Zenigata was able to find, and he confirms Lupin's suspicion. Goemon explains that when he kicked the sword up, the timing managed to deflect the knife just enough that it wasn't a lethal hit. Karen gets locked up alongside Fujiko, while the latter still has faith in the rest of the gang. John continues his attempts to recruit the two of them, but didn't account for Karen still having Jigen's gun. John talks her down, but Fujiko tells her not to give up. The gun goes off and grazes him, giving them enough of an opening to take him captive and escape. They toss him aside when they're clear, but he sends Keith after them. Lupin, Goemon and Zenigata make an attack on the island with some explosive barrels. Their plane soon runs out of fuel, so they all bail out. Zenigata moves in on John to arrest him, while Goemon meets up with Fujiko and Karen. Lupin also joins them and races in Keith's direction when he attacks. Keith manages to get the upper hand and takes aim at Lupin. He's shot by a still alive Jigen. Turns out there was a basement door he was able to escape into before the grenade went off. Karen returns with the goal of revenge back in her mind. Jigen doesn't resist, but Keith survived thanks to the bullet Jigen fired not piercing him. Karen shoots Keith instead, and combined, everyone takes him down. Unfortunately, she takes a shot in return. Jigen tells her there's a bullet left if she still wants to take her revenge while she still can, but she instead hands him a remote that will destroy the nukes on board the Ivanov. John arrives with the Ivanov, once more offering the gang a position in Shotshell. Despite staring down a military force, Lupin refuses, though Fujiko's more willing. It's a ruse to get close enough to hold him up. He calls his forces off but escapes with the Ivanov, telling Brad to ready a missile. The gang convince Jigen to destroy the Ivanov, even if it means the money goes up with it. Later, as they attend Karen's funeral, Fujiko reveals the money was transferred to a French satellite developer. Zenigata has been reassigned thanks to the Shotshell stuff, but Lupin gives him the slip with a fake arm courtesy of the black market. Boarding a rocket, the gang head out to the satellite and find their prize. As I mentioned back then, this movie feels like a semi-remake of the final episode of Series 3. We even get a few direct nods to that episode, what with the submarine having the same name and a nod to the bit with the world leaders trying to buy it off the gang. That said, that episode largely played things for laughs, while here it feels as if there's a bit more at stake, albeit more with John than the world leaders. Interesting to see some of Jigen's past come back to haunt him in the form of a family member of an old target. While not a potential love interest this time, it does follow the pattern of things not ending well for women he's involved with too. It was also a pretty nice touch managing to work in all the supposed junk Lupin picked up at the black market at the beginning, even working in the fake arm in the usual comedic Lupin fashion. It was nice to see Lupin and Zenigata working together, even if it was kind of brief in its execution. Also a nice demonstration of showing Zenigata can be quite sharp in the form of Karen failing to steal the car keys. I guess when Lupin steals from you all the time, you become more sensitive to anyone that isn't him doing it. I do wonder if there was supposed to be more to the director that appointed Keith that got cut, seeing how Zenigata got put back on the Lupin case pretty quickly. There tends to be some kind of corruption from whoever strikes him off, but we don't see anything from it even knowing Keith's past. Masaki Osumi's work here is certainly a far cry from his Series 1 days, as visually this looks great. Has its own style, but still recognisably Lupin. I suppose with time comes experience, and with Kashiwabara's help he certainly has a better handle on the franchise for this movie. Certainly a darker toned movie than the last few, but overall, pretty solid entry. Next time, Zantetsuken burns against the Dragon of Doom that holds the key to an alloy stronger than the all-powerful sword. Until then,